Howdy folks, it's Matt again with Carroll Restorations, and today we're going to be going over how we address flush ends, how we get them close to where we want them for sanding, and then finishing and the whole 9 yards. So let's dig into it. So right here, this is what we call a flush end. It's kind of hard to see probably from the angle you're at right now, but this one, when I bring the camera up, you'll be able to really tell. Completely flush the plywood box with the face frame, and that's how the reveals are on all of these styles and ends here. Usually a lot of cabinet makers, whether they're like small shops or factories, they typically just go with a 1/4 inch reveal, which means there's a 1/4 inch lip on the inside of here. The face frame sticks out a 1/4 inch on the back side there. That's just pretty standard for the industry. You can find them all the way up to inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch, whatever people really want. For the most part, it's usually 1/4 inch, and that's usually what we do. But lately, a lot of people have been going after this flush look. It's kind of more modern, and it looks really nice when it's all done. It's desirable for sure. We're gonna go ahead and get this all prepared for sanding, final sanding, before we go ahead and bring this thing into finishing. And then we're gonna put some shelves in here and get our drawers all set. Typically, a lot of people will just say to chisel this right off. We don't really like to do that though, because a lot of times this cabinet grade plywood we have has a very thin veneer face on it. Like this veneer face is a 1/64 of an inch, which is, tiny, tiny, tiny. It doesn't really leave any room for a lot of sanding or anything, or any mistakes really. So the best way to go about it and get a perfect finish, or near perfect anyway, is to just use a flush bit on a router and just go ahead and clean this whole thing right off of the plywood, so that way you're not digging too deep. The glue's not going to pull up any of the veneer, and you're not going to sand through the veneer trying to get everything off, trying to hog it off. So that is what an unfinished flush end looks like right after clamping. We got a nice glue line here. We don't want to starve that joint. We do an offset tenon with our plywood and then transfer that over to here on our face frames. Go about a 3/8 inch deep and 5/16 over. It's kind of hard to see. I can't really. Oh, I can show you right here. So that's what I'm talking about. We go 5/16 down that way and 3/8 deep with a 3/8 wide bit. And all of those measurements and figuring is going to be dependent on how thick your plywood is, because the router bit itself does not change. So a lot of figuring that goes into it to get it all dialed in. Pretty much should be perfect. This is what a just about finished flush end will look like. As you can see, it's pretty much perfectly flush now. There's just the littlest bit of an edge here, so this is good to get hard blocked. And once that's done, this will be ready to go. We'll go ahead and we'll do our round overs on our face frame and everything, and get it all dialed in and nice. So this is the router I'm using today. Now typically I just use a 1/4 inch router, but these are pretty thick face frames. I believe they're 13/16 or 7/8 thick, I can't even remember. A lot of times they're 5/8, 1/2 inch even, 3/4 usually at most is what we see on a lot of other people's cabinets. These ones, the way we made them, we wanted them to be a little bit thicker to accommodate for the new hinges we're using. We're using Blum hinges. Blum, I don't even know how you pronounce it.
Blum.
It's a new model hinge, so we wanted to make our face frames a little thicker to accommodate for the changes there, and it just kind of worked better with our design. So because of that, the 1/4 inch router bits were not long enough that we had, and they really weren't thick enough to be hogging off all this stuff. So we're going to move it up. We're going to use a 1/2 inch router here. This is the one we typically always use, the Porter cable plunge router. These are fantastic routers. Can't really say anything bad about them. They have tight tolerances, they perform extremely well, they last forever, and they'll pretty much handle anything that you throw at them, within reason. This is our bit that we're going to be using. Just a 1/2 inch, 3 inch shank, I believe. And it's got the bearing on the bottom there to ride on the plywood. And that's what we're going to use to clean that whole edge up in one foul swoop. All right. So when you're doing this, you want to be really careful to not be tipping your router as you drag it across the surface, because we only have 1.5 inches of surface material for this to sit on. And if you ever used a big router before, you know that they have a tendency to want to grab and bite and kind of twist you, kind of like torque steer in a front wheel drive car or something like that. So anyways, you just want to be really careful, especially if you're not used to these routers, to not be tipping it like this, because that'll dig right into that, and once you do that, it's over. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. If you don't have a lot of practice, I would recommend putting like an auxiliary piece of wood here or something of that nature, just so you can have more of a surface to maintain this machine's level, its flatness, so you don't tip it. But I'm not going to do that because I've used this thing a million times and I'm used to it. So basically the process is just going to be to get it started, plunge it all the way down. I'm going to set my depth here in a second. Then you're just going to ride this all the way across, and what that's going to do is it's going to clean up this glue line right here, and it's going to flush up this wood to my plywood, so it's pretty much perfect. It just will need a light sanding, and then it'll be seamless. And it won't be digging through the veneer or doing anything it shouldn't be doing. So in the long run, this saves a lot of time. It provides a way better finished product. And once you get used to this and you can use this really proficiently, it's basically going to make it so there's no issues. There's no burning through a veneer. There's no chipping out the veneer. And there's not going to be any divots in the face frame from some funky grain in here, chiseling it, and it catches and snags it. So this is really the best way. It'll save a lot of time and it'll make your finished product a lot better. Number one thing too, when you're doing any of this kind of stuff, router work especially, ear protection, eye protection, because this thing sends out some sawdust and some chunks of wood, and it's also ungodly loud. Let's go ahead and get that ready. That's my depth gauge. Basically just gonna barely have the top of the router blade above this. This is the top of the router blade. The cutter is maybe a 32nd or 16th at most above this wood right here. So that way we're getting the maximum depth and still cutting this whole thing evenly. So I like that depth. I'm gonna go ahead and lock my plunge stop, or whatever you call it. Check the bottom. My bearing is way down here, so I'm getting past any kind of glue drips or any imperfections right here by this seam. We're gonna go ahead and begin. Gonna go ahead and hit it one more time. That's how it's done. You can still see a little bit of glue right here, but that's fine. That difference right there it's less than a 64th of an inch, and so that's pretty much nothing. One quick hit with an orbital and that'll go away, and it'll be pretty much perfect. So, say hi to the boss.
Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to our shop, and I hope you're enjoying some of these videos. Thank you. And God bless you.
All right, everybody. That's how you do it for Flush Fridays. Go out there, make some sawdust, have fun, and do a great job and stay safe. God bless.